YouTube, how the fudge you doing? Once again, Second City Sleepers back here talking about everything wrestling. Last time we talked about last Raw show. If you want to check that out, go ahead and go through our page. If you want to, go ahead and subscribe. Find our video very easily that way. But on today's episode, we're going to talk about the tag team division and how it was within the past and how it has declined up to today's standards, even though they are starting to make it a little better nowadays. But I will start off with, going back to tag teams, like you had the Road Warriors, you had APA, even though I know they weren't that great, but just saying that they're not that great and they were up there. That fact by itself is just, nowadays you have the Usos, and then you have... Exactly. But you have the Usos, you used to have Swagger and Cesaro. Thank God Cesaro panned off from that. Then you got Ryback, so then you got Goldust and Stardust, Stardust now, which is very creepy. But those are like your top tag teams right now compared to how they used to be back then. When you had
the Wyatts.
You got the Wyatt brothers too, who are now coming into it. But compared to tag teams long ago, when you had, like I said,
it's not a traditional tag team division anymore.
Like you had the Road Warriors, you had the Hardy Brothers, you had Team 3D.
Well, okay, I'll put it this way. All right, don't quote me on the dates and times, but Survivor Series, and I will watch it to the day that I die, and I loved it. It was a traditional tag team elimination Survivor Series match, and it was. Used to be, I think, in 1988, 89, it would be four. Well, it used to be 4-on-4, but then, and in the beginning it was 5-on-5.
Yeah.
But then for tag teams, it was 5-on-5 tag teams. So, which was awesome, because you would have, all your tag teams on, and that was just beautiful. But once your tag team opponent got pinned and eliminated, then the tag team might have to go. My point is they had the British Bulldogs, the Rockers, Powers of Pain, the Conquistadors. I'll even throw the Conquistadors in there. They were good. Powers of Pain, Demolition. It was just tag teams on top of tag teams on top of tag teams, and they were so. That's not even Legion of Doom. Road Warriors weren't even. They were around, but they were in NWA, WCW at the time.
Right.
I think Jim Crockett was around at that time, and Jim Crockett put a lot of money into Legion of Doom Road Warriors at the time as their big, badass tag team.
Which was a good move on his part.
Which I think that, in all honesty, was honest. You know what I mean? Is that what Vince ripped off the Road Warriors from, Demolition? Like, he made Demolition and Powers of Pain from the Road Warriors because he couldn't sign the Road Warriors because they didn't want to leave Jim Crockett, and hence Demolition and the Powers of Pain were born. And even though the Powers of Pain were around for a while, but I don't think they were known as the Powers of Pain at the time. And then Demolition were just thrown together, but they did really good.
Yep, I agree.
And I think that was the golden age of tag teams. The mid 80s, early 90s, and then it just went to...
Yeah, that was a time back when people would buy pay-per-views just to see the tag team titles instead of... I can't say that for everybody, but there was more people that there was more hype in the tag team titles going to a pay-per-view than the world title. Granted, Hogan had it throughout most of that time, so people already expected Hogan to win it. But that was one thing with tag team titles. It was unexpected how the match would end up, and it was unexpected how the match would go at the same times. When you would have the main WWE or WWF heavyweight title, or whatever you would say back then, you kind of expected who would win that. It's kind of how it is nowadays, except every title you kind of expect who's going to win what nowadays in pay-per-views. But back then, when it came down to tag team titles, you didn't know who would win. It went back and forth throughout the entire match, and it's just different nowadays. It's so much... The tag team division nowadays is so much weaker, and there's so much less depth. When you had... Even, I'll throw this out of the box. You probably can hate me with this, but you had, about 10 years ago, you had Brian Kendrick and Paul London.
No, yeah.
those guys were decent. They couldn't talk for anything, but those guys had a lot of in-ring talent. You know, Brian Kendrick's now on the independent thing. I don't know what Paul London's doing.
Is he still alive?
He may not be, but if he's not, we apologize for that.
I think that, but I think that's like where I think tag team wrestling lost its glamour. Like where they started putting two talented wrestlers together instead of being two guys that are the same.
Yep.
I don't know if that comes like Demolition. Like they had a gimmick. Like they were Demolition. They both painted their face. They both wore the same outfit. Powers of Pain. I mean, the Freebirds were a great tag team,
yep.
And they were a better tag team than they were a group. And a lot of people will categorize them as a group, but they were a better tag team than they were ever a group. And they were great. And I think, and the Rockers. I mean, they looked the same. I mean, one had blonde hair, one had dark hair, or whatever. You know, one was blonde, one was brunette, but they always dressed the same enough. Nowadays, you got. You know, one guy has his own, you know, persona, and the other guy has the other one. They're like, oh,
yeah.
well, we don't know what to do with him. We don't know what to do with him. Let's throw him into a tag team.
Well, it's a thing nowadays. When you throw in a tag team, other than the Usos and the Wyatt's, pretty much, you're throwing in two guys who have decent charisma, but their charismatic style, it's completely 180 from one another. It doesn't work at all. And compared to past ways, you know, like he's already said, you know, you had the Road Warriors who match the same. You had the Rockers who match the same. You had so on and so on who match the same. It just doesn't compete with guys nowadays at all.
Well, it doesn't.
I will throw down real quick what declined tag team wrestling. And I think it was 05 around there is when they teamed up HBK and Cena, and they ended up winning the tag titles. That's when it went downhill, in my opinion. And I know it probably has a lot to do with the fact that I can't stand Cena, but you have Shawn Michaels, who was amazing, and you have Cena, who was not, and you team them together, and it didn't. I mean, granted, you had two of the biggest superstars at the time on a team, but it didn't work.
No, but they did that before, though, too. They did that with. Like, you know, they had Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they were called. It's I can't think of it right now, but I will get to it in a minute. But that's what I'm saying. They started getting away from the traditional tag teams and then throwing all these guys together, which was like
Rock and Sock,
you know,
connection
and
right
Rock and
right
Sock.
there, yeah.
But I mean, they actually made themselves. They had a name. Then you had no the last great tag team without a name, and just their names was Edge and Christian, because you had the New Age Outlaws were good. I love them, but they had a name. The British Bulldog. I mean, everybody had a name except for the two men. Well, Brothers Destruction was Kane and Undertaker,
Of course, but
you know they won it for like a minute, and then they hated each other, and then they lost it.
That was the one thing they could have ran for a very long time, but they just kind of. Granted, they probably
2-man power trip.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
It was Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin. They won the tag team. They called it 2-man power trip because they were like the best at the time at what they do, and they were two egos.
Well, that's another thing. Going back to that, like I said earlier, with the Cena and the HBK thing, like what he just said with the Triple H and the Austin thing, it's like it didn't work. I mean, granted, they were two amazing talents, but working together as one and trying to have good charisma together, it just didn't seem right. I mean, compared to other guys like with the Hardys and 3D and Edge and Christian, Road Warriors, APA, whatever you want to say. Those guys had connections. With tag teams, it all comes down to connection between two guys. You don't have to be the best in the company. You just have to be the best at what you do and the best at working together as one. And those guys, they did not do it for me. I don't know how you guys will feel about that, but it just wasn't. It didn't
who
seem
didn't
right.
do it for you?
Well, like I said, the Cena and HBK and the Triple H and Austin, it just didn't look right. The Rock and Sock connection, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah, as a traditional tag team division, I understand that. Because, nowadays they're trying to get it back. And I love that the fact that I only have one tag team title other than two, like how they have the United States Championship and the Intercontinental title. We're back in, I think that was the first when they started doing all that mess with, two tag titles, two and one Intercontinental, one two mid-card titles, and then two world titles. The first thing they got rid of was the two tag titles, which was the best thing they could do,
Yes,
just
I agree
to legitimize the tag team division, because they were so bad. It was like, you're going to have Rey Mysterio and Hornswoggle, and they would be a tag team.
Yep.
It never happened, but it was getting to that point where it was going to be that stupid to where they would just team up anybody that they didn't care about, and they're like, oh well, we need to use him because he's under contract for another year, so let's throw him with him, and then, well, we feel bad for him, let's let him win the tag team titles, which totally disgraced the tag team titles and the division itself, which I hated. And I think they are really bringing it back with the Usos. And like you said, they're like, who else? The Usos but, you gotta take one step at a time.
It's the Usos, they're great.
The Usos.
They're great, but they're... it's nothing spectacular by any means.
No, but you gotta take small steps to legitimize the...
But the Usos have been in the company for what, 6 years now, and
Ooh, the Usos?
It's been about that, I think.
The Usos have been around for maybe 3 years.
I thought it was more than that. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I thought it's been longer than that.
I don't know. Look it up, people.
Yes. Look it up for us.
Sure.
Look it up for us.
But
even though we're supposed to know.
That's true. But but see, then they got the stupid gimmick tag team, like the El Matadors or whatever they're called.
Oh God.
And that's just bad. I'm like, why do you gotta?
The Colognes used to be so good, and then they
were
put them
better
with this
than
Olay stuff, and it's like, what are you doing?
They were better as the Colognes than they were what they're doing now.
So you got the best guy of that family. You got Carlito, who's the best talent out of that family, and he's running around doing independent stuff.
Yeah,
he's got Primo and Epico and Supremo and Superdo and
a little bull.
They got the little bull running around who fights with Hornswoggle, who gets on a pay-per-view while Ziggler sits in the backstage.
It's not fun at all.
But anyway, not to get off topic. Next thing, one thing I want to talk about real quick is I'm sure there's quite a few that had a WWE network. If you've seen the greatest tag teams of all time, you had the Rock and Sock Connection who was up there, but the problem was with that, you had Demolition behind them, who was probably one of the top three in all time, in my opinion. You had... I just lost my train of thought. You had... I think the Hardys might have been a spot behind them. You had Edge and Christian, who were behind them. I think the Dudley Boys might have been behind them as well, but I'm not positive on that. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But Rock and Sock Connection, they were together for what, 6 months?
Yeah.
If that, and you're gonna put them in the top 3 or 4 as one of the greatest tag teams of all time, just because Dwayne sucks someone's
and Mick Foley,
private spot. But Mick Foley's awesome, especially his daughter. But I always my number one would be Demolition, and I like Demolition just because of, I guess that's what I grew up with, but now being older and watching every tag team that ever wrestled. Maybe is Demolition the best? No, but they were the first, they were the first ever tag team to three-peat as WWF at the time, WWF tag team champions, and they did it at WrestleMania 6 against Colossal Connection. So, which you were not going to talk about.
But it did happen. So
sorry for you 4 fans that are out there, of those guys.
Hey, Haku was a bad mother, and Andre the Giant, who was a Hall of Famer. That was
only
a good
because
tag
he
team.
put down 3 cases of beer one night, or whatever, how much it was,
and then 10 cases of wine. No, but
you are an animal, even though you can't see this right now. God rest your soul.
No, Andre the Giant. But see, that's, besides the team they beat, which is. Okay, not one of the best tag teams of all time. Okay, I understand that, but they had become 3-time world tag team champions. for the first time ever. First time being 3-time WWF Tag Team Champion, WWF at the time. Don't get me wrong, don't think I'm messing up and saying WWF, but I meant WWE.
Back at the time when it was
Because
WWF.
now you can say WWF, because if you
Yes.
watch the network, they say WWF. But, and that, I used to love tag teams. I was more of a tag team guy than I was. I loved Hogan and all that, blah, blah, blah. But, like, the Rockers I know. Hogan's your favorite, too.
Oh, yes.
But I love the Rockers. I loved...
The Rockers were amazing.
And that's when, okay, here's the perfect example how good tag teams were at the time. They had jobber tag teams that were mainstream tag teams, like the Bushwhackers. Never would win a match in their entire lives, but and then the
Terrible, but they were entertaining.
but they would have a mainstream tag team, and they would have it to go against Demolition or the Rockers, or when you watch Primetime Wrestling, the Bushwhackers would go against. And then they would have the Quebecers or, Strike Force. When Strike Force actually won the tag team titles at one time. Then they broke up, and then, by the way, Demolition first tag team titles they won, they beat the Strike Force. But now they just throw people together, and it's not as fun anymore. And I hope it gets fun once again. And I think the Usos are going to try to bring it back. And there's probably another 2 tag teams that we're not thinking of that I can't remember, but
So there's a few more. I know there is, but
on top of my head, and that's the thing. If we can't think about it on top of our head, they need to start putting them on mainstream platform.
That is one thing too. If there's a tag team that we did not talk about tonight, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Give us your ideas about tag teams we did not come up with and why you believe they are better than other tag teams we brought up tonight. That way we can express our opinions in future episodes about that. But yeah, I mean, so we had the Rockers and all that stuff. I mean, Demolition.
But see, and then to stick on the tag team subject, but kind of getting off on it, if you think, well, let's say like okay, you take the Rockers, Heart Foundation, maybe the Bulldogs, and there's maybe 2 or 3 other tag teams I'm not thinking of, but out of them tag teams came great so I'll go from the Bulldogs. British Bulldog came, but he wasn't as good as Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart. Bret Hart started with, the Hart Foundation. Bret Hart became a great, Hall of Famer. Shawn Michaels was with the Rockers, became a Hall of Famer. I mean, you do Edge and Christian. Edge became a Hall of Famer. Like, it seemed like you have to start in a tag team and be good in a tag team, but a good tag team, and dominate in a tag team, and not just being thrown together when you're has been nobody. You need to start. It's something to think about. Like,
really
you
is.
don't want to, like, if I'm going to start my wrestling career, I might be like, all right, we're going to do a tag team, and then however we work out, we'll see who, what happens. We'll be a great tag team, and if somebody's going to step up, we'll take that. We'll take that risk. It could be you, it could be me. We never know. And just at the time, it seems like there was more of that was like the NXT in WWF in the 80s. Even though they probably had to, but the NXT and the WWF in the 80s was like, all right, you're going to be a tag team. And if you can survive that, then you might become, an Intercontinental Champion, and then the World Champion, and then do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, we're starting to run late on this episode, so really quick, I'm just going to bring up one more topic. If you had a dream match between 2 tag teams, could be a world title or not, just a dream match between 2 tag teams of any time, what would you pick?
Wow, good question, great question. I would have to say, just on top of my head, because I swear to God, I didn't know he was going to ask this, so I would have to say, because I love Demolition, so I would have to say Demolition versus, just on top of my head, just because I want to see it, Demolition New Age Outlaws. I would love to see how that would work out.
That would be interesting. Who would you say would win that?
I would have to say that. Who do I think I would win, or who do I want to win?
Who would you think would win? Not who would you want
I
to
think the
win.
New Age Outlaws would win because they were like both of them in their prime. New Age Outlaws were just better, but I really think, in my heart of hearts, I would want Demolition to win.
Fair enough. What I would want to
I was
see.
gonna say, well, now I'm gonna put you on the
Yeah.
spot.
Well, of course, I got to go with Road Warriors. That's my all-time tag team.
There you go.
The coming up to that would be very difficult. I would love to see. I would have loved to seen them and the Dudleys
Oh,
go back and forth
The
in a
Dudleys.
tables match, just because Road Warriors weren't known for that, and I would like to see their potential with trying to do something different with the Dudleys. I would think the Dudleys would beat them just on the card, just saying it's a tables match, but it would be an outstanding match in my opinion. I mean, you have probably two of the top. I can't say three. Two of the top 5 tag teams of all time going at it from different generations. The match would be outstanding. That's damn near a WrestleMania main event right there, in my opinion.
I agree, and you know what? I kind of feel bad thinking. I'm glad you brought it up. I don't think once when we were talking about the tag teams, I said 3D, and they are probably in my top 4, if not 3.
So they're awesome.
They are. Maybe I said, or you said it, and I didn't even recognize it, but that is very good. I love Team 3. Well, the Dudley Boys, Team 3D, whatever they're called now.
So God bless Bully Ray right now in TNA. I mean, he posted something on Twitter.
Dude, you know who he's going on with?
Anyway,
He's going out with Velvet Scott.
yes, he is. Which
Not going off the script, but oh my god.
I would love to be him right now.
Hey,
But
gives us.
you got to give Bully Ray a lot of credit. 'Cause I believe it was him that posted on Twitter within the past few days, depending on when or not this airs. That he said something about whether take a word or two off this, whether or not even if you're a wrestling fan, it shouldn't matter what company you cheer for, TNA, WWE, the independent scenes, AEW that I go to, just any wrestling company. If you're a true wrestling fan, you should follow any wrestling company, period. You shouldn't just favor a single one, because you'd be surprised what you see sometimes, even though you think a certain company might not be that good. But anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. As always, I'm Alex, this is Bill. Be sure to hit that like button below if you like this episode. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like our channel and all of our videos. That way you can stay subscribed to us and be able to find out when all of our future videos come out. Also, we do have a Twitter and a Facebook page. Links will be downloaded in the subscription. Be sure to like and follow those. And as always, take it easy. YouTube, we'll see you fudging later.